It's July 22, and it's also the final episode of PFTOT. For now, you never know when it's going to come back, but it won't be a regular staple as of Monday because that's the day PFT Live returns to Peacock, Sirius XM 85, Sky Sports, podcasts, wherever, however, whenever you get your content. We will be generating 2 hours per day every single weekday, except for the days that we don't, but there won't be many of them. Definitely not 5 straight weeks of them until next year. And as I said earlier this week, to the chagrin of the control room, there will not be a 5-week hiatus next year. I guarantee you of that fact. Speaking of guarantees, big guarantees for Kyler Murray in his new contract with the Arizona Cardinals, but not as much as Deshaun Watson got. I kind of saw this coming, and we spoke about it yesterday as it relates to the funding rule. That's the big problem when it comes to teams now being expected to do significant guarantees well into the future for quarterback contracts. With the Browns giving Deshaun Watson 5 years, $230 million, fully guaranteed, every penny of it. That means that, and we predid the reporting and the math on this, I was told back at the time the deal happened that by March 31 of 2023, Jimmy Haslam, owner of the Browns, has to put $169 million in escrow. So the question is, how many other owners can or will put that kind of money into a separate account to pay the salary of the player who has a full guarantee? When all of the teams are good for it, the TV contracts guarantee that the guaranteed money will be paid. It no longer needs to be put in escrow. What was once a shield for the NFLPA and its players has become a sword now that the NFL uses to refuse to guarantee these kinds of deals. And it's a delicate time for NFL quarterbacks and for agents. Remember, after Deshaun Watson got his deal, J.C. Tretter, former Browns center, president of the NFL Players Association, posted an article at the NFLPA website pushing all agents to try to get deals like the one Deshaun Watson got. Like, it's on you, not on us, even though the union could have wiped out the funding rule altogether in the last CBA negotiations if it wanted to. The funding rule is the problem. And that's why I believe Kyler Murray is only getting $100 million fully guaranteed. And I understand that's more money than the vast majority of the world is ever going to see in their lifetimes. But when you're talking about players who have limited opportunities over their lifetimes to get paid this kind of money, $230 million fully guaranteed at signing is a hell of a lot more than $100 million fully guaranteed at signing. The other side of this coin too, and this gets into the smoke and mirrors, this gets into the stuff that goes on behind the curtain when it comes to a new contract. And here's how the game goes. And this goes directly back, I say this at the risk of getting myself further unfollowed by other reporters. This goes back to the reporting last week from the Washington Post about the way the sausage is made for Adam Schefter. There are certain things that you gloss over in order to stay at the front of the line. So you get the text message from the agent when the deal is done. And one way you stay at the front of the line is to not point out, for example, the Kyler Murray's deal really doesn't compare well to Deshaun Watson. Watson got 5 years, $230 million from signing right now. For the next 5 years, $230 million, subject to other issues we may discuss either later in this edition of PFTOT or in an emergency episode of PFT if there's a ruling later today in Deshaun Watson's case. But set that aside, $230 million, $46 million per year, 5 years right now. So Kyler Murray, he has a better contract. His extension, 5-year extension, $230.5 million. He's making $46.1 million per year. Take that, Deshaun Watson. Well, no, wait a minute. Kyler Murray's contract isn't 5 years, $230.5. It's 7 years, $267. It works out to $37 million plus per year on a 7-year deal, not 46.1 on a 5-year deal. So you got Deshaun Watson, who's committed for 5 years at $46 million a year. You've got Kyler Murray, who's now committed at 7 years for under $39 million a year, under $38 million a year. Who's got the better deal? And $230 million is fully guaranteed for Deshaun Watson. So he gets $230 million over 5 years, goes back to the market. Every penny is earned. And Kyler Murray's got $100 million fully guaranteed on a 7-year commitment. He's got 7 years until this contract expires. Now, will it be torn up before then and replaced with a new deal? Possibly, but still, the longer the deal, the longer you wait for the team to come back to the table. That's why Dak Prescott's deal was so great. 4 years, $160 million. And the way it was structured, Cowboys need to come back to him after 3 years. After the 2023 season, they better go back to him and do another deal, or he finishes his contract and he walks out the door. No franchise tag, he's gone. So that's why length is so important. Guarantee is so important. It's not enough to just say, well, let's look at the value of the extension. Let's calculate the average new money. And if it's just a tick more than the guy who did the last deal, this deal's better. It's not. It's not. And look, will I potentially get a call from Eric Burkhardt, who represents Kyler Murray, and he'll wear me out for 15 minutes about this and that and why it happened? And yeah, but I don't care. I don't care, because I'm not trying to balance keeping my mouth shut about the truth so that I can be among the ones who tell you something other than the truth when the first wave of reports comes out. I don't want to say or feel compelled to say, hey, this is the best contract ever, $46.1 million over 5 years. No, when it's not. When it's not. And that's what bugs me more than anything else, because so many people in the business are willing to set aside truth in the name of being first, to placate their producers and their editors, to say, I broke this story, I broke that story, I broke that story. If you're willing to not tell the audience the truth, you get yourself in position to break the news. And the problem is, the audience doesn't care. If the audience cared, if there was real pushback against the people who, in their effort to be at the front of the line, told the audience something other than the truth, if the audience got indignant about not being told the truth, about being lied to about these details, then it would change. But the audience doesn't care. So I care, because I want to be able to say I always tell the audience the truth. And sometimes it's objective truth. Sometimes it's subjective truth. It's my truth. It's my opinion, my true and unvarnished opinion. And look, I didn't intend to go in this direction, but I don't care. I'm always going to be who I am. You're never going to see two different people. You see me out somewhere, I'll be the same way that I am right now. I'll tell you the truth. And my truth, again, my truth may be skewed. My truth may be warped. My subjective feelings you may disagree with, but I am not going to hide them. I'm not going to play the game. I'm not going to tuck what I really think out of sight so that I can engage in these broader transactions and quid pro quos so I can win the race of 280 characters or less. Some do that. And again, the audience doesn't care. That's up to the audience. So bottom line, Kyler Murray's deal pales in comparison to Deshaun Watson's. And he could have just said, I'm not doing a deal. He could have just said no. I wrote an item today at PFT about the frustration the Chiefs have with Orlando Brown. And there was a question earlier this week posed by a member of the PFT PM posse about the Orlando Brown situation and why a deal wasn't done. Look, at the end of the day, Kyler Murray, all he had to do was say, I'll take what I'm due to make this year. I'll take what I'm due to make next year under the 5th-year option, 2023. I'll take the tag for 24. I'll take the tag for 25. And then I'm out of here. He could have done that. 4 more years. Bye-bye. Here's the problem. And this may be why he ultimately did the deal. Baker Mayfield, his good friend, good close friend. I've said this before. When I was interviewing Kyler Murray at the Super Bowl, the year that he was making his decision about whether or not he's going to play baseball or football, and he did the rounds, Baker Mayfield called him like 3 times in 10 minutes. They're good friends. Baker Mayfield did not last year draw the best offer from the Browns. And remember, Joe Thomas reported, the Browns would have paid $30 million a year for Baker Mayfield, and he didn't want it. No, because look, he wanted 40, and he could have made a good argument for 40 last year, and maybe they would have finished at 35. Maybe they would have split the difference, right? Teams here, players here, you negotiate and you get here. And I think what happened with the Cardinals was Kyler was here, Cardinals were here. And instead of digging in and saying, I'll just keep playing 1 year at a time, cognizant of what happened last year with Baker Mayfield, the injury in week 2, and now he's just gone. I think Kyler Murray realized, okay, so it's not $230 million fully guaranteed. It's $100 million fully guaranteed. I'll take it. It's really not $46.1 million per year for 7 years. It's under $39 million per year, under $38 million per year for 7 years. I'll take it. Because the alternative is I'm assuming the risk that I'm going to have a Baker Mayfield situation. And next year, someone will be saying Kyler Murray could have had a deal with a new money average of $46.1 million, but he didn't want it. He wanted more. That's the risk you take. So there is a risk. There is. And it'd be different if he was in the first year under the franchise tag. Once you get there, like Orlando Brown was, it's easier to say, I'll just roll the dice for 2 more years. Kyler Murray, he had 4 more years. And look, could he have tried to push his way out of town? It kind of did earlier this year. And I've previously said that no one seemed to be interested in him via trade. Apparently there was some interest, but not enough to make anything happen. And if the Cardinals' position is, hey, we don't care if these other teams are willing to trade their unhappy players, like the Chiefs with Tyreek Hill, or the Titans with A.J. Brown, or the Seahawks with Russell Wilson, we're just not trading him. I mean, if the Cardinals just refuse to do it, what do? You're stuck. So I'm not criticizing Kyler Murray, because at the end of the day, you have to do what's right for you. And at the end of the day, you have to consider all factors. And a very real factor is that his good friend Baker Mayfield saw his long-term contract with the Browns blow up in his face because of an injury that happened week 2 of last year. It was exaggerated. What's the word? Not exaggerated. Why am I blanking on the frickin' word? Aggravated. Thank you. Aggravated. Thank you, brain. Aggravated against the Cardinals. Kyler Murray was there the day that Baker Mayfield fell awkwardly and his shoulder was all, and that was it. That greased the skids for Mayfield to be out of Cleveland. So I think that was a factor for Kyler Murray. So it is possible to say Murray did what was right for him, and his deal pales in comparison to Deshaun Watson's, because Watson was in better circumstances. Watson managed to get 4 teams chasing him. Watson shrugged off the Browns at the right time because they had already pissed off Baker Mayfield, and they swung back around with a fully guaranteed 5-year, $230 million offer. Advantage Deshaun Watson. So sometimes you get a ridiculously great deal because you just have better circumstances. And that's what Watson had in comparison to Murray. Even with all the crap that Watson created for himself with the lawsuits and the potential suspension and the criminal investigation that resulted in no indictments, all the stuff he's had to deal with, he ultimately had better circumstances when it was time to get a new contract, because he was in a position where his team was willing to trade him, 4 teams were chasing him, and they leveraged the Browns against the other 3 to get the Browns to give them $230 million fully guaranteed over 5 years. Now, Kyler Murray's deal is done. The next guy up for a contract is Lamar Jackson, Ravens quarterback. Did not hold out, showed up for training camp, but once you show up, you're there. I don't want to get into the details of the CBA, but if you're there and you leave, it's a lot harder to exert real leverage. They can, if they want, play ultra hardball with you and shut you down for the full year by sending out the 5-day letter. If you don't come back, that's it. If they choose to, they can shut you down for the whole year. Can't be traded, can't play, you're out. Now, would a team really do that with a starting quarterback? I don't know. But now that Lamar's there, the chances of him walking out the door are slim, but it could still happen. Because again, would the Ravens truly shut him down for the full year if it came to that? But he's there. Will he not practice until he gets a deal? I think he shouldn't practice until he gets a deal. And in the past, when Josh Allen did his contract, I said that Lamar Jackson should take that same document into the office of Ravens GM Eric DeCosta, cross out Buffalo Bills, write in Baltimore Ravens, cross out Josh Allen, write in Lamar Jackson. take that deal. That was last year. Then Deshaun Watson gets his deal with the Browns. Same thing. Take that contract in, cross out Browns, put in old Browns, Ravens. Sorry, Miles. Cross out Deshaun Watson, put in Lamar Jackson. Well, now I'd flip it around. If I'm DaCosta, I take that Murray deal and I say, hey, cross out Arizona Cardinals, Baltimore Ravens. Cross out Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson. That's how much better the Murray deal is for the team than the Watson deal is for the teams out there. And we know Steve Bisciotti, not a fan of the 5-year full guarantee because he said so at the league meetings after the Watson deal was done. So Jackson not represented should be. And this isn't, oh, he's trying to help his agent friends. I just spent 5 minutes explaining why my willingness to tell the audience the truth will tend to piss off the agents who are trying to make their deals look better than they are. But I think every player needs to have a good agent who understands the market, who has the relationships, who can say to the team the things that need to be said, who understands the funding rules, who understands the other nuances and niceties. That's what every player needs, and that's what they deserve. Don't get hung up in the 1%, 2%, 3% thing. You got to pay a fee. That's fine. And it hurts when you have to write a check for it instead of having it come out of your paycheck. Try paying quarterly taxes if you want to see some real pain. When it's time to pay something that isn't taken out of your check. They take it out of your check, it feels a lot different. So I get it. And I think Lamar Jackson, end of the day, and I think Russell Okung, Richard Sherman, and most of the other players that don't have an agent, it's ultimately about not recognizing where the value comes from. Oh, I got to pay this guy 1%, 2%, 3%. All he did was make a few phone calls a few years ago. There's more to it than that. And this deal, I think, got more complicated for Lamar Jackson because the Murray deal is so team friendly and because the Watson deal is so player friendly. Jackson needs an advocate. Because what's your argument? If you're Lamar Jackson then, and they bring in the Kyler Murray deal. Now, I know it's a little bit different because Jackson's only got 1 year left before the franchise tag dance. But if you just tack $46.1 million with $100 million fully guaranteed, another $60 million guaranteed for injury, if you tack that onto what Jackson is due to currently make this year, there it is. There it is. Maybe you make it 46.2 instead of 46.1. There it is. Easy to put it together. And from Jackson's perspective, what's his response to it? Other than, no, I want more. Well, why do you want more? Give us a formula. Why should you get more than Kyler Murray? And I guess if I'm Lamar Jackson, I'd say, well, I won a league MVP the year he was a rookie. And look at his playoff performance last year. Of course, the response to that would be, well, at least his team made the playoffs. So he was 10-2. He was an MVP candidate until he had an ankle injury. There's always going to be that back and forth. It's always better to have someone other than the player being the one engaged in that back and forth because you can piss off the player. You can fracture the relationship when an agent isn't involved. It's a very delicate thing to do. I deal with that all the time, frankly. I don't have an agent. Sometimes you got to speak hard truths. Sometimes you got to say, look, this is Mike the agent talking, not Mike the client. It can mess up the relationship. And now with the Murray deal and the Jackson deal, not Jackson, Watson deal, the Jackson deal, I think becomes more complicated. Ben Roethlisberger, first year of his retirement, spoke to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. MDS wrote the item at PFT. I looked at the article from Ron Cook of the Post-Gazette. There's some stuff there that I think is interesting. And Roethlisberger used to do a radio spot with Ron Cook and Andrew Filipponi on 93.7 The Fan. I remember it used to cause all sorts of interesting stories to the point where Roethlisberger realized I just shouldn't do it because he'd get on there and he'd get comfortable and he'd say a bunch of stuff he shouldn't say. Well, he said some stuff to Ron Cook that I got 3 points I want to make. First, Roethlisberger said that last year he thought that GM Kevin Colbert didn't want him to come back for one more season. Mike Tomlin could have gone either way. And Art Rooney, the president of the team, was the one that said, we got to bring him back. Now, as I've heard it, The Steelers made Roethlisberger an offer last year on a reduced salary that they thought he would reject, that they were surprised when he accepted it because it was like a $5 million pay cut with no way to make the money back. They were surprised he said yes. And frankly, and look, let's be realistic here. Roethlisberger last year was a shell of what he used to be. No mobility. Sims pointed it out early in the season. He was trying to be Ben Roethlisberger of a decade ago. Eventually, he colored within the lines. Eventually, he found a way to make quicker decisions, not try to extend plays, not try to physically do what he no longer can. And they got to the playoffs. It was surprising. But they weren't going to be, even though someone foolishly thought they'd beat the Chiefs in the wild card round. And hey, it was looking good early on. They were getting nervous in Stanford. Sims and Matt Casey were getting real nervous when it was 7-0 after TJ Watt scored a touchdown on a fumble recovery. But then the floodgates opened for the Chiefs. It just wasn't enough. It was over. It was done. And I think that Rooney, to the extent that he did break the tie, to the extent that maybe he said, let's put an offer out there to see what he does. Let's just see what he does. And if he takes it, then we'll do it one more year. Remember, 2020, there were no fans because of COVID. They didn't have a way to say goodbye to Ben Roethlisberger. There's no way to have closure. So last year was an opportunity for the fans. And look, it ended the right way. That Monday night game, Browns-Steelers, the clouds part, and Ben Roethlisberger ascends to heaven. I mean, that was a perfect ending that doesn't happen if he doesn't come back for last year. So that's point number one. Point number two, he said that not enough credit is given to the play that won Super Bowl 43. That was the first Super Bowl I ever attended. That was right before we did the deal with NBC down in Tampa. It was awesome. The touchdown pass to Santonio Holmes. Possibly it would have been the first Super Bowl in overtime if the Steelers had scored a touchdown or a field goal instead of a touchdown. But Roethlisberger throws that pass. Santonio Holmes catches it. He does the celebration with the ball, the LeBron James homage that should have drawn a 15-yard penalty. The kickoff should have been at the 20, not the 35, or it would have been the 15 at the time. The Cardinals should have had a chance, a better chance to win the game. All sorts of layers and levels. Fascinating Super Bowl, one of the most exciting ever. Roethlisberger thinks that play doesn't get enough credit. And it made me think of the fact that Roethlisberger at some level is a little salty that he wasn't the MVP of that game. Santonio Holmes won the MVP for the catch. There was a belief that Roethlisberger should have been the MVP for the throw. And I mention that because 2 years later, when it's Steelers-Packers in the Super Bowl, there's a belief that Bruce Arians, who was the offensive coordinator at the time, tried too hard to showcase Roethlisberger and make him the MVP of that Super Bowl, and they ended up losing the game. And that may have been a factor, a big factor, in the retirement of Bruce Arians. Arians and Roethlisberger were too close in the estimation of management. They needed to end that. And of course, it went the other way with Todd Haley. But they needed to move on from Bruce Arians because Arians and Roethlisberger were too close. And there was a belief within the team that Arians was trying to make Roethlisberger the MVP of Super Bowl 45 to the detriment of the team's effort to actually win that game. Now, would they have won the game if they had a different game plan? I don't know. But when I saw what Roethlisberger said about Super Bowl 43, it made me think of that. Finally. And, I feel like a jerk even mentioning this, but when Roethlisberger's asked if he has any regrets, how is there no mention of what he put the city through, of what he put the team through in 2010, after he got sued for rape in 2009, after he had the incident in Milledgeville, Georgia, which frankly was kind of a byproduct of the Arians relationship because Roethlisberger had a place in Milledgeville, Georgia, because Arians did. There was the incident at the bar. There was the question of whether or not he was going to be prosecuted. And all of a sudden, there's not going to be any charges. I still think, I don't know, but I still think to this day, there was a prompt settlement, which Deshaun Watson would have been wise to do to avoid what he's gone through the last 16 months. Again, it's his own fault. But how does that not get mentioned as your regret? You're asked what regrets you have. That was as low of a point as it's been for any starting quarterback. They were ready to run him out of town. They thought about trading him. This is a chapter in Playmakers. remember listening to Pittsburgh Talk Radio, all of the grievances that anyone that ever encountered Ben Roethlisberger in public and the way that he acted, and everybody dredged up things about how, like, he was, a teammate would come to him and say, hey, we're having a charity event. Will you sign a jersey for it? And he'd say no. So I don't know how that, it's just amazing. It's amazing what the passage of time can do for something that was a fact, a huge controversy. And it's just like it never even happened. And I'm not saying that Ben Roethlisberger should be walking around with a T-shirt on that says, I got suspended 6 games, reduced to 4 in 2010 after multiple accusations of sexual misconduct. But it's just odd. Let's just leave it at that. All right. A couple more things before I get to your questions. I have to comment on this Rams Super Bowl ring. I have to. First of all, it's basically a giant sundial now that you slip onto your finger. I mean, that thing could affect the weather in some small countries, depending upon how you hold it in relation to the sun. It's amazing how big it is. Like, I would at least want a Super Bowl ring that I could comfortably wear on the rare occasions when I decide to wear them. Like Rodney Harrison, when he's working a Super Bowl for NBC, he puts on his 2 rings. And they, I mean, it doesn't look like a normal wedding ring. It's a big ass ring, but this thing that the Rams have, and the trend is bigger and bigger and bigger. I get it. But this thing the Rams have looks like a spaceship landed on the guy's hand. And just like the Buccaneers ring last year, it's got the screw top. You twist off and the stadium's inside. Remember the video of Antonio Brown? What was he, courtside at a basketball game, I think, or somewhere, and the top fell off, and he's just very nonchalant. Hey, grab the top of my Super Bowl ring. But the thing that really got me, when I saw the front of the ring, and I saw 1 Super Bowl trophy and 2 palm trees under the LA. How do you just pretend that the team didn't win a Super Bowl in St. Louis in 1999? How do you just gloss over that? You just do it. It's the ultimate last middle finger to St. Louis, because there should be 2 Lombardi trophies on that ring. There's 2 palm trees. I think that makes it even more of a message to St. Louis. We know how to count to 2. We got 2 palm trees. We got 1 Super Bowl trophy. Not 2. We got 1. Somebody pointed out the Colts, when they moved to Indianapolis and finally won a Super Bowl there, they didn't have 2 trophies on theirs because they won Super Bowl 5 in Baltimore. And frankly, nobody even remembers Super Bowl 5, even though it was a field goal walk-off win. Jim O'Brien, number 88, kicked the field goal. It was like a comedy of errors, turnovers. It was just like a forgotten Super Bowl. But still, I think that if St. Louis hadn't successfully sued the league and the team and forced a $790 million settlement, there would have been 2 Super Bowl trophies on the Rams' 2nd Super Bowl ring. And look, are they allowed to do whatever they want to do? Sure. But we're allowed to say, hey, you should have 2 trophies on there. And the fact that you only have 1 is an FU to St. Louis. And it is, in my estimation. Lastly, haven't written this yet at PFT, but what I did today, I reached out to Karen Patton Seymour, the lawyer who represents Dan Snyder in this protracted back and forth with the House Oversight Committee, because we are 1 month from when Carolyn Maloney, the chair of the House Oversight Committee, said she's going to subpoena Daniel Snyder for testimony. 1 month later, no subpoena. We are 9 days away from the last time there was any communication between the 2 sides that we know about. And we're 6 days away from the date that was tentatively suggested for Snyder's testimony. So what's going on? We haven't seen anything. What's going on? I asked nicely. A spokesperson got back to me and said, Mr. Snyder is still willing to voluntarily testify without a subpoena on Thursday, July 28th. And I asked, well, is it set up? No, it's not set up. So I don't think it's going to happen next Thursday. And I really do think that the committee has decided they're going to wait it out, see whether or not Daniel Snyder returns to the United States for football season, serve him with a subpoena if he does. But for now, there isn't a damn thing they can do. And by talking about it, they only expose that they have no power over Daniel Snyder. As long as he stays on that big-ass yacht in international waters or foreign soil, they can't serve him with a subpoena to testify. So that's where that stands. All right. Man, I've said a lot today. Let's answer some questions for the final PFT OT before the return of PFT Live. All right. So, hey, sorry, PFT PM Posse, you come up with a lot of questions every day. I want to give some time here to some others. Let's see. Here's a quick one, though. I'll answer this one from PFT PM Posse. Is there any way outside of replacing the draft for the NFL to fix issues like Jordan Love's career being ruined because the Packers basically used him as a pawn in the Aaron Rodgers drama? Seems wrong to screw a guy's career like this. No, there's no way to fix it. Unless you take away the draft or unless Jordan Love is willing to say, I refuse to come play for the Packers. I refuse to step into this stew of dysfunction. I refuse to be the guy caught between Aaron Rodgers and the front office. And Love's represented by the same firm. So they could have clued him into the idea that it isn't going to end well, Jordan. But we didn't know how it was going to end between Rodgers and the Packers. We didn't know that Rodgers was going to win 2 straight MVPs. We didn't know he was going to choose not to try to force his way out of town. But now, yeah, Jordan Love's stuck. He's got 2 years left on his rookie contract, and I think he just has to wait it out. He's got nothing else he can do. So to answer the question, there are plenty of ways. The concept of a draft, it tells a player, you are coming to work for this team and nobody else. Unless you're going to sit out the full year and re-enter the draft, you have no choices. That's why I always say, guys, at the end of the process, round 6, round 7, it's better to not be drafted. Because you could get drafted by a team that maybe has too many guys at the position you play, maybe doesn't have a good assistant coach who's able to teach you how to be a professional at the position you play. Maybe there's a better place for you to go that a good agent will help you decide upon and settle upon and focus on and sign with, and then maybe you have a better chance of making the roster. So it's always better to choose where you work, where you live, who you work with. It's always better to have that choice. And a theme that's come up on a couple of the radio spots I do this week, quarterbacks who end up in bad spots. And it's usually top of the draft, not bottom of round 1. But either way, whether it's Jordan Love or whether it's Achilles Smith going to the Bengals in 1999, one of the things that fascinates me, an alternate universe out there where the Eagles have Achilles Smith in 1999, and the Bengals have Donovan McNabb. Would Achilles Smith become the 10-year quarterback of the Eagles working with Andy Reid? Would Donovan McNabb have washed out of the league in a year or two working with the Bengals? It's a huge factor, but the player has no control over it. And again, and this is why Sims and I argue about it. It's an honor and a privilege. That's all part of the effort to brainwash the player into not becoming aware of the fact that you're walking into a situation where, depending upon who drafts you, depending upon where you start your career, you may never even have a career. And look, I think at some level, Josh Rosen's failure to thrive in the NFL is the product of his lack of ability. But it's possible he's just been in one bad circumstance after another. It's possible. He did get drafted 22 spots ahead of Lamar Jackson. And it's not like people say, well, that's crazy. What the hell are the Cardinals thinking? Why didn't they take Lamar Jackson? So bottom line, it's why that I think that all players should have the right to pick where they start their career with a salary cap for rookies that is driven by how the team did the last year. That's how you build some competitive balance into it. And this strange argument that all the great players will go to the same team. They're really going to go to the same team and sit behind the bench. Great quarterback going to go to the Chiefs and sit behind Patrick Mahomes. Great quarterback going to go to Dallas and sit behind Dak Prescott. No, they're going to go to where they think they're going to be developed properly and where they're going to play and where their career is going to get off on the right foot so they can play for 15, 20 years and make a crap load of money. All right, what else do we have? Burn unit. You've said the 49ers may not be sold on Trey Lance. Do you believe that is still the case with them trying to trade Jimmy Garoppolo? Would they be trading Jimmy if they truly did not think Lance is ready to take over? I think it's possible that they may not be sold on Trey Lance, but they understand that we just have to do it. We just have to rip off the Band-Aid and go. And that's what they apparently intend to do. Now, from time to time, they'll throw out this goofy idea that they'll keep Jimmy Garoppolo around at $25 million. If they pay Jimmy Garoppolo $25 million to be the backup to Trey Lance, they really have lost their damn minds. More than when they didn't evaluate Patrick Mahomes in the 2017 draft, or said no to Tom Brady in 2020, or freaked out and ultimately invested 3 first-round picks plus in Trey Lance. If they pay Jimmy Garoppolo $25 million just to preserve the ability to maybe trade him to a team that loses a starter before the deadline, they really have lost their minds. So at some point, you just have to accept the fact Trey Lance is our guy. Let's support him. Let's not have Jimmy Garoppolo around. Let's go all in with Trey Lance. Let's make him the best quarterback he can be. And let's see if we got it right. Let's see. We'll find out. There's only one way to find out. You got to go all in. If you're going to go all in, you got to go all in. I don't know that there's anything really profound in that, but they've already made the move. Now's the time to show the cards, or at least find out what the cards show. It's not just showing the cards. They got to look at the cards. They went all in without knowing what their cards are. Now's the time to lay the cards down so everyone, including the 49ers, will know what the cards really are. Let's see what else we have here. Ooh, Tommy Caruso. Oh, this is one that can get me in trouble based upon what I say. After surviving a seemingly endless string of scandals the past decade, and by all appearances poised to survive the Watson and Commander situations, Roger Goodell appears bulletproof. What would have to occur for owners to force him out, or is he locked in until he chooses to retire? I think he's locked in until he chooses to retire. I really do. I think the owners, above all else, appreciate the fact that they have someone who is very adept at taking all of the heat that otherwise would be directed to them. That's one of the ways he earns his money. And we've seen it time and again. He does it well at press conferences. He did it pretty damn well a month ago today before Congress. Non-answers, words, nothing really admitted that causes any problems for anyone. And then you move on to the next question. And you find a way to ever say the thing that you're being pressed to say. It's a skill. It's an art. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's there until he decides to walk away. The challenge, though, is this, and there's been some reporting on this. Who's next? And I think, this is my opinion, I think Roger Goodell has been very keen on making sure that there's never an internal threat to the throne. And I think that's one of the reasons why. Anytime somebody begins to bubble up and you start hearing, oh, that could be a future commissioner. That person ends up leaving. I don't think it's a coincidence that it's happened like 3 or 4 times. So at some point, and this may be in the next Goodell contract, a mandate to develop his successor, a requirement that you're going to embrace the person that comes next. And at some point, you just have to do it. We're all going to die. Newsflash. We're not going to do the thing that we do, that we think we're so good at and we're irreplaceable. We're all replaceable. And the game will just keep going. You take out anyone who's connected to it in any way, shape, or form right now. They drop dead right now. The game will keep going. Whoever it is, I'm not going to name names because then, that's the ultimate jinx to put on someone, linking them to death. Any person connected to the NFL, if they, let's not say die, if they just choose to walk away right now, if they wake up tomorrow morning and say, I'm done with this shit. Sorry. The train keeps rolling. We see it every year. Player gets injured. Big name player out for the year. Train keeps rolling. Commissioner leaves. They change the name on the football. Train keeps rolling. He needs to understand that. At some point, the train is going to keep rolling without him. Now, I don't want to be too cynical here and suggest that now, I'm not even going to say that he wants to make sure that his successor does a bad job so his legacy is even better. Almost like what a president would do. I want the next guy to screw up so I look like I was better than this person. I don't want my successor to do a better job than me. I'm not going to suggest that anyone is that shallow or petty, so I won't say that. And I didn't say that. My point is that I won't. I just want to be clear. I won't say that. I did not say that. Let's see what else we have here. Ryan Dupree, who decides what a player's position is actually labeled? Seems important when you look at franchise tag, value difference between tight end receiver. Didn't Jimmy Graham challenge it at some point? It was 9 years ago. And the CBA says that your position for tag purposes is the one at which you took the most snaps the prior year. And Graham's argument was he lined up in the slot more than he lined up tight to the tackle. Therefore, he was a receiver, not a tight end. And there was an arbitration. There was a fight. At the end of the day, the NFL and the Saints won that argument because the arbitrator basically found, well, those times that you line up in the slot, you're still a tight end, basically. That fight has come up with the distinction between linebacker and defensive end because the linebacker tag, the outside linebacker tag is less than the defensive end tag. So teams will tag a pass rusher as an OLB when he's really a DE. That's happened in the past. I think it happened with Terrell Suggs. It's happened recently with someone else. So it's driven by where you line up, but it's ultimately determined by an arbitration process. Tom Marshall, A-Red Zona UK. Can Russell Wilson continue the quarterback trend and go on to win a Super Bowl this year with a new team? Well, we saw it with Tom Brady, goes to Tampa Bay and wins a Super Bowl the first year. We saw it with Matthew Stafford, goes to LA and wins the Super Bowl the first year. This is a great litmus test for both teams, Seahawks and the Rams. Because I think the Seahawks believe they can still be successful without Russell Wilson. Plug in Geno Smith into the system. They didn't build the offense around Russell Wilson. They tried in 2000. There was that let Russ cook stuff for a while. The defense has caught up with it. I think the Seahawks believe at the end of the day that Russell Wilson ultimately isn't good enough. I'm not saying I believe it. I think the Seahawks ultimately believed he wasn't good enough to be a Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, build everything around the quarterback. They're still putting the quarterback into the system. They may be wrong. We're going to find out because the Broncos are clearly building everything around Russell Wilson. And, every time I say this or tweet this, I get the geniuses out there who say every offense is built around a quarterback. It's not. It's not. There are certain teams that have systems, and the quarterback is the guy who runs the system. Other teams, the quarterback is the system. In Baltimore, Lamar Jackson is the system. In Pittsburgh, whoever wins that job is part of the system. Jalen Hurts, part of the system. Tua, part of the system. There are some quarterbacks, and I don't want to do an exhaustive list here, but Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, Russell Wilson, they are the system. Matthew Stafford's not the system. He fits the system better than Jared Goff did, obviously. But the quarterbacks, especially the ones who can move around, the ones who can make chicken salad on the fly, when the play that's called fails, they can call and run a second play with their athleticism, their awareness, all of those great attributes, and turn what should have been a sack or an incompletion into a positive. Those are the best of the best. And those are the ones where basically the offense is, go do your thing. And our plays are going to be drawn up with the understanding that ultimately you're just going out there and doing your thing. That's what the Broncos are going to do with Russell Wilson. The Seahawks refuse to do it. If the Broncos can pull it off, we'll see. But I still don't know what to think about the Chargers, Broncos, and Raiders because they're in that division with the Chiefs. Somebody's finishing in fourth place. Somebody's probably not making it to the playoffs. And all four of those teams good enough to win other divisions in the NFL. All right, let's see what else we have here. Looking for a good one to wrap it up with. There's a lot here. We got a lot of thank you for coming back. We missed you. We appreciate it. And I've had so many emails in recent days. People who are anxious for us to come back. The routine's been disrupted. I get it and I appreciate it. And look, this isn't BS. Again, I'm not going to BS you. Some days you're rolling out of bed at 6:30 or whatever. Yeah, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And I've gone through that existential thing earlier this year. Like, what am I really adding to society? But when I hear from people that we are part of their way to just ignore all the crap, part of their routine, part of what makes them feel comfortable and familiar, that means a lot to us. And we're glad to be part of that. So we're glad to be coming back. All right. Tommy Caruso, have you confirmed Sims is still alive and ready for Monday? Is he pissed he has to work on a Monday? I I try to let him have his time. You know, it's like, because we communicate so much when we're on. We're not joined at the hip when we're off. Like, I don't want to drive him crazy. I check in with him from time to time, but I think he's doing well, and I think he's ready to go. Ryan Dupree, since the funding rule seems to hurt both the PA and the owners, why don't both sides agree to do away with it? But it doesn't hurt the owners. It helps the owners. It allows them to hide behind it, to say we're not going to do fully guaranteed contracts for the next 5 years. See, if the Cardinals had done 5 years fully guaranteed, 7 years fully guaranteed, really, if you add it to the 2 years that he had left, if they did that, they're taking the risk that this guy at some point in the next 7 years is going to get injured to the point where he can't play, or he's going to have an accumulation of enough small injuries that all of a sudden he's not the same guy. And they still have to pay him. I think the owners don't want to do fully guaranteed contracts for veterans well into the future. The funding rule gives them a way to avoid it. The irony of the funding rule is it started as a protection for the players, and now it's something that gets used against the players. And I don't see the league giving it up easily. And again, the union in any negotiation with the league could get rid of it if it wants to. All right, let's see what else we have here. How long does it take Sims to come back from the haze after summer vacation? I don't think he ever exits the haze. Christian Zimmerman wants to know if the new Vikings regime will turn Kellen Mond into a starting quarterback. They are all in with Kirk Cousins. And Kirk Cousins, early 30s, this is year 11 for him. He's still got a lot of football left. If it works out, he'll be the guy for several years to come. And Kellen Mond ends up being a wasted draft pick. He's a round 3 version of Jordan Love, where they drafted Kellen Mond at a time when they weren't really sure what the future was going to be with Kirk Cousins. The coach at the time didn't like Kirk Cousins. Little did they know that the coach didn't like Kellen Mond either. I don't think Mike Zimmer likes anyone, frankly. So I don't think that Kellen Mond's future is going to be in Minnesota. I think Mond is destined to end up somewhere else in due course. That's just my gut feeling at this point. All right, let's call it right there. That's long enough. Almost an hour for the last edition of PFTOT before we return for 2 hours on Monday with PFT Live. Check us out all weekend long at profootballtalk.com and get ready for the possibility of PFT double OT at some point on Friday afternoon if Judge Sue L. Robinson, we're getting close to noon, at some point between noon and 5 Eastern, does she drop the Deshaun Watson ruling? If she does, we'll read it, we'll digest it, and we'll be back here to explain it. Otherwise, see you Monday morning, 7 a.m. Eastern for PFT Live. Thanks as always for hanging out with us, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.